प्रविश्य मम वाचमिमां प्रसुप्तां सञ्जीवयत्यखिलशक्तिधरस्वधाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं प्राणान्नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम्.
For a real Tyagi who has already renounced his ego, renounced his Bhogecha and Kartri Bhoktri Bhava, let us say, the ego and the Bhogecha, for him it becomes natural. We use a word here, for him it becomes Sahaja. For the other aspirant of Sannyasa or Tyaga, for him it is a sadhana. For the Tyagi who has attained that, for him it is Sahaja. Sahaja means it is naturally with him, it is spontaneous. That is the difference. For him this all is consciousness is a Sahaja Jnana. It is not by intellectual gymnastic he has to understand, then yes, all is consciousness. Not like that. It is possible because consciousness is not in the objective field. Consciousness is what we are. It can never be known as something different from me. So when we know the consciousness, it becomes Sahaja. See, any other thing if you know, then again you have forgotten, you have to learn it. In this case, it is not to be forgotten at all. There is nothing to forget. So it is called Smriti. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, you will find Nashto Moha Smritirlabdha. That Smriti is not usual objective memory, not that Smriti. That we are the soul is a fact, and that is the only fact. We have forgotten it. When we get back that Smriti, then there is no question of again thinking like this. That is, it becomes Sahaja. Sahaja means which is naturally with him. Is it clear now? Nahi dehavrita shakyam
शक्यं
त्यक्तुम कर्माण्यशेषतः
त्यक्तुं कर्माण्यशेषतः
यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी
यस्तु कर्मफलत्यागी
सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते.
सत्यागीत्यभिधीयते.
See, after distinguishing the three kinds of Tyaga, now he is defining the Tyagi in various terms. In this, what he is saying? Satyagi iti abhidhiyate. He is called the real Tyagi. Who is that further? He says, Yahtu karma phalatyagi. That he has said earlier also. He is again repeating, one who has renounced the karma phala. And next verse onwards he will say that what is this karma phala? Anishtam, ishtam, mishram cha. It is not the objective karma phala. Objective karma phala nobody can renounce because it is a fact of nature. Only the phala is inside. Whenever we link our happiness to that, our bhogecha to the result. Do you now have got acquainted with these terms? Bhogecha means I want to enjoy from that something. And kartritva means I have an egoistic feeling that I will do this, I have done this. These two, it is called together kartri bhoktri bhava. Expression will become very simple then. But the problem of simplicity is that it will become a cliche and nobody will think what is kartri bhoktri bhava. Whenever we are making it a simple definition like that, the problem is it becomes used so much that nobody thinks about it, what it means. Kartri bhoktri bhava, that means wherever we are doing anything action, we are linking it to either the ego, ahankara, or the bhogecha or enjoyment. There comes the problem. So one who has renounced that, he is the Tyagi. So this Krishna has been saying in many places also he had said, here again because he is defining Tyagi, he is repeating that. And saying that nahi dehavrita shakyam tyaktva karmani asheshatah. As long as the body is there, a living body is there before dying, there is no way that you can leave all the karmas. So he is completely removing the doubt and the misunderstanding that never think that Naishkarmya means all karmas have been renounced. The external karma cannot be renounced. Objective karma cannot be renounced. Externally, bodily karma can be renounced, but the mind will go on. That is also karma. So any external karma or mental karma or anything, it cannot be fully renounced as long as the body is there. Dehavrita. Shakyam means he is not able to, he will not be able to tyaktum, reject or renounce, tyaga. Karmani asheshatah. The actions, asheshata means without any residue. That means complete renunciation of karma is not possible as long as the deha is there. So by karma phalatyaga, what he means is, by tyaga, what he means is karma phalatyaga. That means kartritva bhoktritva tyaga. This is what it is. Some of the slides you have seen earlier also, but many new people are there. So particularly Namrata has been insisting. I did not have the mind of showing this, but we are showing so that it remains in your mind. Whenever some slides are shown, it helps our memory also. Aim of spiritual sadhana. We are starting from the point of a constricted identity, a false identity, constricted I. What is that? We have an image of about our own identity, depending on the body, our character, our mind, our likes and dislikes, everything. With that we have posited or we have created our egoistic I. That is the constricted I, because we feel that I am separate from all others. I like this, I like that, he is my enemy, he is my friend. So that's a small constricted I. There we start, and the final, the result of the ultimate goal of spiritual sadhana is the liberated I. What does it mean? A real universal identity. Atmaupam mena sarvatra samam pashyati Arjuna. It is actually universal, we are saying, because we have the feeling of smallness about us. When we say universal, we have the feeling of we are all pervading. But truly, when you actually do this, do the sadhana, it is not that all are there and you are there everywhere like that. The entire universe is appearing in the consciousness. The entire universe, which includes my body, mind, personality also. That small I, that egoistic I, is part of the nature, part of the world, part of the universe. That is also appearing in the consciousness. That is how the universality is coming. Because that consciousness cannot be divided. It is the subject. It is not an object which you see, it is moving, it is going here, there, etc. That is the real Atma, the real soul, on which all the objects are appearing to be. This is the ultimate. Now, since it is from a small something, small identity, to an infinite identity, say, with no fragmentation, no division, that kind of an identity, then what should be the process of that? Is it not simply expansion? Expansion and removal of the Bheda Buddhi, of the divisional, differential notions, is it not so? From a small, differentiated, fragmented identity to an undifferentiated, uniform, universal identity, how can we go? By removing the differences, removing the smallness, removing the selfishness, removing the constrictions, we will become like that. So whatever helps us to go that way, that means whatever helps us for inner expansion, that I am becoming wider and wider and I am not so constricted, that itself is sadhana. Suppose by doing puja, you become more and more selfish. It happens. By doing meditation, you become more and more selfish. And you start beating your child because they are creating noise or so. It is very common. If you become selfish, then you are working the other way, the wrong way. By doing puja or anything, if selfishness is increasing, that means it is asadhana that you are doing, it is not sadhana. Even by killing others, if your mind expands, then that is sadhana. Don't get scared. It is in the Bhagavad Gita. What was Arjuna taught? To kill his own grandfather and own teacher, and by that his mind expanded. Because his mind was small, he was not able to do that. So Krishna's purpose was to give him a dimension of the mind where he can kill Duryodhana as well as his most beloved grandfather. That impersonal dimension has to be taken. That is the goal of spirituality. So anything that looking within we find that expanding is spiritual sadhana. Here what are we studying always? It is this only. Karma phala tyaga means what? Kartritva bhoktritva tyaga means what? That the small ego and I will enjoy, these things are being removed. So our vision is preference, prejudice is being removed. So we are becoming more and more uniform, comprehensive, all inclusive, impersonal. So that is how we are growing. So the entire spiritual sadhana it's a thumb rule, that inner expansion. Look within and whatever I am going to do, is it expanding or constricting my mind? Is it making my mind open and light and bright? Or is it making me heavy? Inside is becoming heavy, constricted, fearful. These are the tests. So this sadhana can be two kinds. One is contemplative, another is interactive. Contemplative means we are studying the Shastras, or even listening to the lectures also. While listening we are actually thinking, or say meditating. These are all non-interactive, you can say. Contemplative if you don't use, non-interactive sadhana. Another is interactive throughout the day. Next slide. Contemplation on soul or Brahman, which is one and uniform, takes the mind to oneness and uniformity. See, this is also very simple. Whatever we interact with, we gain that property. Suppose a ball is standing, another ball is moving. When the moving ball hits the standing ball starts moving, some energy is transferred from here to here and both moves. Is it not? Similarly, if you interact with an angry person, you will find for nothing you are becoming irritable. If you interact with a peaceful person, you will find some peace is dawning in you. Anywhere, it depends on your association, that what you are gaining from. There is interchange is taking place everywhere. So if you think always of, say, small things related to your enjoyment, indulgence, etc., enmity, blaming, praising, whatever, as long as our mind is interacting with constricted small ideas, concepts, etc., the mind becomes small and constricted. The same mind, when it interacts with the concept of universal concept, noble concept, the mind becomes like that. It takes whatever we are thinking, the mind becomes like that only. Because it is interacting with such concepts. Is there any doubt about it? So, as we interact more and more, think about this soul or Brahman, then our mind also becomes like Brahman. Finally, the mind becomes a pure mind itself is Brahman, the non-differential mind. So this is the contemplative sadhana. What are we doing? Very simple, like experiment, that our mind is an entity, that I am interacting with some concept of Brahman or Atma, and by that the mind is growing in the dimensions of the Brahman and Atma. Even if Brahman and Atma did not exist also, it doesn't matter. Because that concept it is interacting with the mind will become like that. Suppose Atma is wrong, Atma is not there. How does it matter? The mind, by interacting with the concept of the Atma, will take the dimension of Atma. That is the science of contemplative sadhana. Next. Interactional sadhana. Now, if we only restrict ourselves to contemplative sadhana of 1 hour a day or so, whatever we are gaining in terms of uniformity, infinitude, going beyond constrictions, all of them will be annulled and overpowered throughout the day if you are not practicing anything of that. Is it not so? Half an hour we practice give the mind interaction which makes the mind universal. And 18 hours we interact in the manner which makes the mind small. So what will be the nature of the mind? Slowly it will become larger or smaller. 17 hours it will become small and 1 hour it will become large. So naturally it will become smaller and smaller. So what for a real spiritual seeker, what he has to do is he has to transform all his actions, all his interactions into sadhana. That means throughout the interactive hours, he has to have the same goal in mind, that uniformity, that beyond the Bheda Buddhi, beyond the Kartritva and Bhoktritva, as I have explained just now. So all his work, all his interactions will have to be induced with that removal of Kartritva, Bhoktritva. Then whatever he does, that becomes sadhana. That is what Arjuna was trying through the war also. Every day there was some problem Krishna had to resolve. Has to see that his mind again expands to that dimension. Even Bhima, when he defeated Duryodhana, he was about to step on his head and Krishna corrected him. What are you doing? He is a king. You cannot do that. You have killed him because killing was necessary. More than that, you cannot do anything. So, throughout the day, what are we doing? Evenizing response to pairs of opposites. Success and failure. Sukha and dukkha. That means whenever the dukkha, which we do not like, or even sukha also, or success and failure are coming, we have to make our reaction uniform. It is not that in the work you will not look for success. That is an objective phala. Again remind you. When you are looking for a success in whatever project you are doing, you are looking for the objective result of the work you are doing, of the project. But the moment you link your enjoyment, your happiness with that, then it changes. So that has to be removed. The evenness of the mind towards success and failure means not that you will not no more ask for looking for success and you will be happy with the failure. It is not that. You will still work for the success, but not associating your own Kartritva, Bhoktritva, enjoyment and ego with that, ahankara with that. Not to cling to what I like and not to hate what I dislike. Likes and dislikes always will be there. Suppose somebody is good, will he not be liked by people? Suppose somebody is given to all troublesome behavior, will anybody like? But that like or dislike we should not cling to the like, and we should not hate what I dislike. That means it should not generate hatred in us. Our Swamiji always says that in the ashram there should be always a troublemaking person. Because otherwise how the others' minds will become purified, how they will transcend. That trouble creator is a test for us that we don't generate hatred towards anybody. And it's a fact. It's a very efficient way of improving our mind. So it takes the mind to uniformity even in the presence of the interactive plural world. See, then your sadhana becomes the same whether you meditate, read the scriptures or you interact. Always the goal of both is the same. Is it clear or not? The sadhana becomes an all-time sadhana. Throughout everything, through everything we progress. And the progress will be known directly. In meditation, what happens? One day you have a good meditation, next day you don't have. Maybe after that 3 months you don't have good meditation. So you are not sure whether you are really progressing or not. In this case, what will happen? You can judge your behavior, your mind's response every time. That I was getting so much affected, now I am not getting affected. Earlier I was not able to love these people, I am now able to love these people. I don't react to situations so easily. I don't get angry with my wife or husband so easily. All those things you can test every day, everywhere. Next. This is I have just summarized the Bhagavad Gita sadhana here. I told the other day also, we are born with an abhava bodha. Abhava bodha means insufficiency. Why I am saying Abhava Bodha? Because of that insufficiency only we try to get something from the external world to become happy. If the Abhava Bodha was not there, suppose we were sufficient from beginning, then we will not be motivated by desire at all. Desire is to have some happiness from something. That is why all our actions are motivated by desire. If we did not have that insufficiency, inborn insufficiency, then it is in scriptures it is explained very well. When Vasishtha is considered as the first son of Brahma the creator. So when first Brahma created Vasishtha, he created him thinking that a knower will be very good. So he created Vasishtha as a knower. He was, poor fellow, was not doing anything at all, sitting tight like a stone. So Brahma understood that what has happened, because he doesn't have any Abhava Bodha, he doesn't have any insufficiency, so he doesn't want anything from the world also. And if he doesn't do any sadhana, how will he lead other people? He will not know anything at all. Once he has the Abhava Bodha, insufficiency, and he understands, does the sadhana, and finally understands that it is Abhava Bodha is because I am not looking into myself. It is the self which makes us Purna, full. Because I have been looking for external objects, small things to become happy, I have been always suffering from the unhappiness. The moment I stop looking for external things for happiness, we become happy. All these things they will know by sadhana only. But Vasishtha did not do anything. Then Brahma again put him on his lap. The moment he put his on his lap, Vasishtha started crying, what have you done? What have you done? I am suffering. Everywhere there is suffering and all. That is with the sankalpa of putting the suffering in his mind, Brahma did it, to give him suffering. Then Vasishtha Brahma explained to him, this is the world, you suffer and you find out the way to win over the suffering, and then you will be able to help people in making them fulfilled. Why did I say this? Abhava Bodha. So we are born with an Abhava Bodha, and that is what makes us act. Generally all our actions are motivated by desire. Because what is the desire? When I was a baby, I will like to have some milk to fulfill my whatever it is. Then fruit, then maybe playing with the friends, or fighting with the friends, we will be happy, whatever. So the item goes on changing. When we grow a little, maybe it is the first rank in the school. After that, maybe it is a girl. After that, maybe it is children. After that, it is maybe grandchildren. It goes on changing. But always we are looking for something to make ourselves happy. So it is all desire motivated action that we are having. So karma, bondage from desire for happiness. Why karma is binding us? Actually the whole life is karma only. It is action only. Life is, it's a divine law of action. Everywhere it's action only. But generally what we are doing, we are acting motivated by the desire. And because that desire, even if the desire is fulfilled, other desires come. So because we are not fulfilled, the karma actually creates a bondage. Whatever we are doing, we are not becoming fulfilled. Whatever we are doing, not becoming fulfilled. So lack of fulfillment is binding us. And because we want success, if we don't get success, get failure, then we suffer. And even if we get success, then we become elated till we lose that or something happens. So constantly this suffering and happiness, we are getting bound by that. So this bondage is created by the karma itself, desire motivated karma. So what did Bhagavad Gita do? The yoga of Bhagavad Gita? How karma itself can liberate us instead of creating bondage. The whole Bhagavad Gita is saying that karma is creating bondage, but karma is not at fault. It is your mind which is at fault. So you change your mindset, change your attitude, do the karma in the manner it liberates you. Now if you leave the karma, then all the defects of the mind will remain. You will remain as impure as you are. So you better engage in action and utilize the action by changing the mind attitude, so that every time you do something, your mind expands. You are freed of some constrictions. You are freed of selfishness. So the mind is always expanding. You see the great ingenuity in the whole thing. Do you understand that? Are you appreciating that? It's a great ingenuity in the whole thing. The karma is producing bondage. Krishna said, I will make karma the liberating power. Krishna or Vedabhyasa, whoever. I will make karma the liberating instrument. Instead of producing bondage, it will produce liberation. And so don't leave karma, but leave the desires. And desire is redundant. Why should you not leave? Go on doing the karma and making it an instrument for liberation. So for that he has given in the Bhagavad Gita fourfold sadhana. How to transform the actions? By this fourfold mental attitude. They are all inner attitudes. Nothing to do with the external. Jajja means not performing homa and jajja externally. No. Bhagavad Gita jajja is our mental attitude. I have already explained jajja and all these I have explained. So one is the jajja attitude. That is, whatever my body, mind, personality is capable of doing in a given situation, it is just a small speck in the universal jajja of the Lord. As the plants are growing, the flowers are blossoming, the earth is running around the sun, my body, mind, personality with its intelligence, with its willpower also will do naturally whatever is to be done. This is a jajja attitude. Then samatva. This we have already explained. Samatva means having the evenness of the mind towards. Likes and dislikes will be there, but we will not hate what I dislike, we will not cling to what I like. We will not cling to success. Success we will always want, but if there is failure also, it will not affect us. That is the samatva. This samatva, Bhagavad Gita has taken ultimately, the mind becomes absolutely even. That means it comes through the knowledge that everything is Atma alone. The whole universe, although it is full of infinite variety, this variety is only an expression of the soul. The whole infinite variety is only as if written on the consciousness. So it is an uniformity all over. That is the ultimate samatva. Atmaupammena sarvatra samam pashyati yo Arjuna. That one who sees everywhere as his Atma. That is the ultimate samatva. So it takes it to that level. Then transcending guna bondage. This I have discussed in great detail, that by utilizing sattva guna and rajoguna, you win over the tamoguna bondage. By applying more and more sattva, you win over the rajoguna bondage. Then finally, applying surrender and jajja bhavana, you win over the sattva guna bondage also. These are all coming in the 18th chapter towards the end. The surrender and guna, transcending guna bondage.